wondering how I got into this mix.
Oh, what's up, everyone? This is Derrick Broze. I'm here with Ben Swann. We're at Anarchapulco 2018. We both just finished talking.
That's
just
right.
killed
You
it.
did a great job, by the way.
Thank you. So we just spoke last week. My viewers have probably heard the audio interview. We didn't get to talk in person, so
That's
I
right.
wanted to kind of follow up with that. So some of the biggest comments we got on that, because we talked about the alt-right, we talked about Trump. Apparently, some of the viewers think that you, as a journalist, and me as a journalist, that we're not allowed to have opinions. That you shouldn't be able to express what you feel about Trump or Saudi Arabia or things like that. And this is something you've talked about in the past, as far
Absolutely.
as the idea that objectivity, what that really means in journalism. I want you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. First of all, the idea that journalists don't have opinions is absolutely false, right? And that's obvious. It's obvious. Human nature says every human is going to have opinions on things. Actually, this is a kind of a misleading concept that's been pushed by companies like CNN for a long time. It's what Glenn Greenwald calls the view to nowhere, right? Which is, I'm the subjective journalist. I don't have an opinion. I don't know anything. I just report what I see. But that's a robot, right? That's not a person. And so what is a more honest way of handling it is to say, you know what? I do have an opinion, and if I'm upfront about my opinions, so obviously I'm very libertarian in my views, I believe in individual freedom, individual liberties, I'm very upfront about that, so you know where I'm coming from. However, it's not important whether or not you have an opinion. It's important whether or not you take the facts of a story and you twist them to meet your opinion, or you twist them to fit what you already have as a preconceived notion. I believe that as journalists, that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is saying we'll go wherever the facts lead us in a story, but obviously we're going to have opinions on things.
Absolutely. And, one of the things is, I really feel like it came because you're critical of the current president, right? And you probably got the same thing being critical of Obama in the past.
Oh,
It's basically
absolutely.
just people
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I liked Ben Swann, but now he's expressing an opinion I don't like, so
Right.
he's not a journalist.
Right.
One of the other things that we touched on was the influence of Saudi Arabia, and some of the commenters, and I think this is an important touch on, what do you think about, because beyond the sort of paranoia about Russia's about to take over,
Oh, right.
we see a very obvious influence from nations like Saudi Arabia, but
Sure.
also Israel. Like, what are your thoughts on just the Israeli influence?
Well,
in the US?
there's a huge, obviously, Israeli lobby that really lobbies Congress all the time. We all know that. That's all public knowledge, and is very, very influential. And when you talk about the amount of money the United States gives to Israel compared to other countries, it's insane. And I'm not saying that we should give more to other countries. Maybe just pull back on what we're giving to everybody, right? But it's just about wielding influence. That's why we give the money. But Saudi Arabia is the same thing, right? We allow Saudi Arabia to have incredible influence over Middle East policy. And for those of you who are watching who say, hey, he's expressing his opinion and he's anti-Trump now, I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not pro-Trump. I believe that Donald Trump is the President of the United States, and I believe as President of the United States, he has an incredible opportunity. And one of the opportunities he has is to actually live up to some of the things he promised during the campaign. During the campaign, we're doing a piece about this, by the way, coming up soon. During the campaign, he promised over and over he was not going to get involved in Syria. Don't fund those so-called rebels who were actually ISIS and Al-Qaeda fighters. He talked about this openly. And yet now the actions that he's taking, which, by the way, I don't even believe are his actions. I believe those are the actions of the military-industrial complex, the soldiers, and not soldiers, excuse me, the military leadership who want to continue to perpetuate war. And so we're back to where we were. All the things he said he wouldn't do, now we're doing them. And so I think it's important, in terms of Syria, so I think it's important that you hold those who are in power accountable. It doesn't matter if it's Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or Barack Obama. And as we talked about in the speech, I probably was more critical of President Obama to his face than any reporter in history. And yet, and there are a lot of people who said, well, you're just a right-wing guy. You don't care about facts. No, I care very much about facts. But if you are going to view how we cover stories through the left-right paradigm, you're probably never going to be happy because one day it's going to be critical and the next day critical of this side. So.
All right, last question, Ben, and we'll let you go because I know others are waiting. Looking at, we've talked about this a little bit before as far as it's becoming clear the United States, there was just the bombing of the Russian tank. I think some Russian soldiers were killed in Syria.
Well, Russia says they were mercenaries, right?
Yeah, so the situation either way is escalating. It doesn't seem to be calming down. And as you said, there doesn't seem to be a removal. Many of Trump's supporters credit him for he fixed the situation, they killed ISIS, but now it's clear they're like, oh, we're not getting out of here.
Right.
We also see, and this has been ongoing since 9/11, propaganda aimed at Syria and Iran, and again, you see Saudi and Israeli influence. Just, if you could speculate a little bit, just based on your perspective and your knowledge as a journalist, what do you think is the best case scenario of playing out here?
Oof, well, that's a tough question. So, I think I do agree, you have to give Trump credit for the fact that it seems like in Iraq, he's pushing ISIS out and he is removing their strongholds. That's a huge positive because he obviously inherits a certain mess that's already there. ISIS has a foothold and they're in control of those places. But what you don't want to see, and what unfortunately it feels like we're moving toward, is creating a new power vacuum if in fact Syria does get flipped, essentially Assad being removed from power. And so my sincere hope is that we will not create another power vacuum. At this point, it seems like things are escalating, and that's a very bad sign. It also seems like things are escalating towards the Russians, which also seems like it's a very bad sign. Not because I fear necessarily like a nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia, but just because there's a part of me that wonders, this is my opinion, part of me wonders whether or not that decision is also based on the politics of people saying, well, Trump and Russia. Well, are his advisors saying, hey, if we look like we're in opposition to Russia, it'll make you look better. Yeah. You have to realize that there's politics playing into so much of this stuff. Absolutely. So my hope is, sincere hope is that Trump will back down from taking aggressive stance and escalating what's in Syria. Let the Syrian situation resolve itself and stop funding the so-called rebel groups over there. If he'll follow through with those campaign promises, I think it could be a good situation. If he doesn't, I don't think it will be.
Thank you so much for your time, brother.
Good to see you, man.
Appreciate it. All right. Check out truthandmedia.com. Reality check. Ben Swann is back.